we're live. Right. Hi, and welcome to the Skeptical Leftist podcast, the show where I talk to a variety of people to spread critical thinking, progressive politics, and left-wing philosophy. And once again, I'm joined by my friend Damien Marie Athope. And we have another guest, Marquis Amon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so I think everybody knows Damien by now, but we don't know much about Marquis. So maybe a little introduction.
Oh, I'm just a friend of Mr. Athope's. I'm an atheist, also a critical thinker, and I'm a student of the Athopean philosophy.
Nice.
Right on. Speaking of that, so we were going to talk about Atlantis.
Yeah.
And before we get talking into all kinds of stuff about Atlantis or people's theories or whatever, I just want to give a real quick thing. So people have asked me this before, because I've talked about how, the DNA moves around. They're like, oh, but is Atlantis real? And I don't know how they even come to that conclusion after listening to all the other stuff that I explained, because I don't talk like Graham Hancock or any other kind of pseudoarchaeologist or whatever. But anyway, so no, to make the answer as simple as possible, Atlantis is not real. Atlantis is an allegory, which is a fake story. In the sense, it can be interpreted, I mean, talking about the story, it can be interpreted as having a hidden meaning. And for Plato writing the Atlantis story, the hidden meaning was, look at these people that stopped following the divine order of God, and look at how they got punished, in a sense. So, in a sense, I also want people to understand, Atlantis, they go, well, is it here? Is it here? If you're an honest thinker, you need to understand Atlantis cannot be found any more than you can locate the Jolly Green Giant somewhere in your refrigerator or freezer. I mean,
yeah,
it's said to watch over vegetables that are frozen. Even if you could say something is similar, you need to understand it has nothing to do with Atlantis. It's like another cloud, and you go, that looks like a human face. Well, that doesn't make it a human face. The fact that you could find something that may half resemble Superman stories doesn't mean Superman is real.
Yeah.
Especially, anyways. So I thought I'd start with just saying that, and then also I wanted Corey to go, because let's assume the axiology type of way of doing something, which is I don't know about Atlantis, so we need to go to Wikipedia and just click on Atlantis, Corey, and read the first paragraph.
Sure. So Atlantis, an island, is a fictional island mentioned in Plato's works, Timaeus and Critias, as part of an allegory on the hubris of nations.
Right. So you can stop right there. So it's two different books. And people act like it was given to them in a clear way. Well, it's not very clear in the first one because it's more of a political book, and the other one is more of a poetic book, and so he adds more, in a sense, depth to the fantasy story.
Okay.
So it also says here about it being the island of Atlas. Do you see that? It says Atlantis, and then it says the Greek, ancient Greek, Roman, and it says romanticized. And see where it says island of Atlas?
I don't see that.
It's in the first sentence, or it's like the brackets.
The brackets. Ancient Greek,
and then it says Atlantis. The next thing that Wikipedia has is ancient
island
Greek.
of Atlas. Okay, yeah, okay.
Right. Island of Atlas. So it's already telling you what is it, Corey. So when people say, "Well, it's somewhere in the middle of Western Africa," I just go like, "Are you ridiculous?" The name literally means what exactly, Corey?
It says the island of Atlas.
Island, right? So
Yeah.
It is an island in the story I'm talking about. So anyway, people are like, I found it, this and there. It's an island. It distinctly says what it is. It also says it's an island bigger than Africa and Asia, which would be a humongous continent, not an island.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
But we also know that's ridiculous.
It would be too large for it to actually exist without it having real evidence of it.
For sure.
Exactly. It's certainly something that you say is that big or whatever. Come on. So, but the Atlas. So the next one of the things also I sent you was where it says Atlas is a deity. So it says Greek in Greek down at the bottom. So read the first thing. It says Atlas Mountains.
Okay, yeah.
And it says Atlas, Greek god.
Atlas Mountains.
Atlantic Ocean.
Yep. So if I'm on the Atlas wiki page, or you mean on the Atlantis page still?
Well, I was just saying, I sent you a quote and then I gave you
Oh.
the link, but you can look at the page if you want. But I'm just saying Atlas Mountains relates to the Greek god Atlas. And it also is where the name Atlantic Ocean and Atlantis both come from.
Yeah, it says, yeah. In the
So it's
first
all
paragraph
relating to
there.
the same thing as I'm trying to show you.
Okay.
And then the next, did you see what I was saying, the quote that I sent you? The last couple quotes.
Yep.
And so the next
there it
thing
is.
says in Greek mythology.
In Greek mythology, Atlas is a titan condemned to hold up the heavens or sky for eternity. The Atlantic Ocean is derived from the Sea of Atlas, according to the ancient Greek poet Hesiod. Atlas stood at the ends of the earth in the extreme west. Later, he became commonly identified with the Atlas Mountains in the northwest Africa.
Right. And so it's not saying that Atlantis is in the mountains. It's saying that the deity relates to all these things.
Right.
See what I'm saying? The deity relates to the ocean. The deity relates to the mountains. Because I've seen it before. People are like, will show a thing of West Africa. Go, look, it says Atlanteans. Yeah, it has to do with the people that lived in the Atlantis mountains. I'm just saying that if you don't know, you just throw out these random guesses without understanding what they're talking about. So it's all about this deity. Even though what's weird is Atlantis, supposedly by Plato, is also run by the deity or worships an idol of the deity Poseidon. And there's an issue. We'll read about that too. But so I'm just showing you that already that Atlantis, right, is related to the deity. And so then it says, according to Plato, the first king of Atlantis was also named Atlas, just showing how close this stuff relates.
Yes, and if I recall, is that the Atlas, the king of Atlantis, was also the son of Poseidon or related to him?
That's correct. So a demigod, like half deity. And they also, I think, believe that most of the people there were deities, half deity, and that they were white people, which me and Corey watched that video. But the point that I'm trying to make, though, is to get where these ideas are coming from. All this is relating to a lot of myths, right? So when people talk about this being factual, you understand there's a lot of deity stuff in here. And a lot of the reasons that stuff is related has to do with magical people. So I'm just saying, you're looking for a land of magical people. I'm surprised you haven't found it.
This real city just happened to have, like, the king was the son of a god.
See? Right. I'm just showing you that if you logically just look at what evidence is presented, I don't even think you have to, me personally, go that far. And you're like, it's a fake story. Its ideas has gods all over them, which we know are not true. And all these connections, people are like, well, I think it's here because the old map says Atlanteans. I'm like, Atlantis Mountains? You can just say the people that live in the ocean because that's also from Atlantis or Atlas, I mean. And so, and because once again, and the names relate to deities. So this is not, shouldn't be to me taken as a seriously story since it's got all kinds of deities in it. Anyways.
Right.
But so we'll keep going. So then since the next thing is Atlantis, right, is this, like I said, relates to Island of Atlas, is a fictional place in these two books,
right,
like I told you. So let's go back up to the things where I gave you. So it says, right, that in the story, it's by Plato. So let's click on when was Plato? Who's Plato? Read that first paragraph.
Under the Plato wiki?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher of the classical period who is considered a foundational thinker in Western philosophy and an innovator of the written dialogue and dialectic forms. He influenced all the major areas of theoretical philosophy and practical philosophy and was the founder of the Platonic Academy, a philosophical school in Athens where Plato taught the doctrines that would later become known as Platonism.
Right. Anyway, so the point is he's doing it in dialogue. So he's doing it in like the same thing as the people I've heard before. They go, was Socrates actually a real person? Well, there's no evidence actually that there was a real person. It may have just been like Atlantis, just a tool with which to, in a sense, depart his ideas. And especially, remember, people can get killed because there's a story that Socrates himself got killed. Well, that's like I said.
Talking about Plato's Apology or a different story?
Well, all of Plato's stories that mention Socrates, it's questionable because think of this, if you believe him in a sense, right? Let's say we believe him, because I like to buy what they're selling. Okay, we're going to believe him. Let's look at what the actual evidence is. So supposedly when he was a very young child, he heard stuff from Socrates. Then when he's like, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but because I'm not super good at this time frame, but something about I think it's like 20s or 30s or something when he really starts writing these books. And so the one is written younger. Maybe it's like 10, maybe it's 20s, the first book, and then 30s in the next book. Maybe that's what it was, something like that. But anyways, my point is that it's evolving because time is evolving. And also it's not to me super believable that something he heard like a child like 6 where and then at 20 was able to write it is clear dialogues. Yeah. Really? You really think so? I find that to be a very extreme, claim that I don't find super convincing to think that on average. Now, is it impossible that a young child remembers stuff? I guess some people have gifted minds. I'm not saying Plato's not obviously gifted. So
sure.
Once again, like I said about like axiology, you can't just jump with the first thought. You gotta look at all the extrinsic stuff that's going on and go all this other detail. Because my first thought is it would be completely, foolish. But then you start thinking, well, could it be possible? Well, it could be if someone was really bright. Well, he is really bright. Maybe he's gifted in that way where he remembers because remember, I bring this up is there are some people that have like an autographic memory or whatever, I don't. But I'm just saying it's not outside the thing. But I don't know that Plato was ever said to have that. See what I'm saying? You go back to, right. Then you're skeptical that claim, even though I guess it could be possible.
Possible and anyway, probable are different.
Right. Everyone's different, but it certainly is. It removes that I think every single word is accurate.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Even if he did remember the bulk of it, there's no fucking way he'd remember it word for word and every single accurate. But so my point though is he doesn't do it because it's accurate. He's not saying I am a historian. He is trying to teach you like me, like I do. He tries to teach you thinking. And so he tries to teach you by using methods that you may understand. And like I was saying too, that even the Socrates story, if it is correct and true, right? Socrates supposedly was killed, right, for telling people not to follow the state gods, or being in a sense almost an atheist in doubt of the state gods or questioning the state gods. We're going to also for teaching the youth to in a sense not function in society. Teaching them, giving them human rights and saying, oh yeah, by the way, you do matter.
Yes, that's in Plato's Apology is what you're describing in this story. That's where it is.
Correct. So, but I'm just trying to make it so people can grasp how this relates to the Atlantis.
Yes.
So if you have a person that really doesn't care about facts as much as teaching the message, because remember it's an allegory, so it's a fake story, but there's like a like the way to go, the moral of the story is, that's right. So that's more important. The more important is you get how people think or how to think better. That's really and his goal was, of course, not to invent a fake city that people would go look for and think it's a great white hope. He thought that he was inventing a moral thing to say, follow the gods. That's really, that's it. And so since I don't believe in gods and certainly don't think it's necessary to follow them, fake gods, that his whole thing is just absolute nonsense. And for me, very little worth.
Yes, because Atlantis was destroyed because apparently there was the wrath of Poseidon for not following him, for example.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Supposedly.
Yes. I'm not saying it's real. I'm just saying that's what the story indicated.
Oh, yes. Correct. Well, I don't think that you believed it. So,
no.
But I was going to say too is, So like I told you before that we started all this, that Atlantis is supposedly at war with Athens. And so Atlantis, in the story, he says, Plato says it's 9,000 years from his time. And so basically that's somewhere, or says that he got it from someone else, his relative or something, Chrysius or anyways. But these people that he supposedly got it, anyways, if you put all the time together, that's why Graham Hancock said, oh, it's at 11,600, the time of the Younger Dryas, and talks about the Younger Dryas impact that science has not proven in any kind of way. So, but there is a temperature change. It's just that it's saying that it's global, saying that you know why the temperature change happened, and that anyways, I don't want to get into all that, but I know it's hard to when you talk about any of this kind of stuff because there's all these more nonsense that just like extra fluff for the nonsense.
Myths and lies built on myths and lies built on myths and lies.
Yeah, it's like
it's an embellishment.
No, it definitely is that. So, so like I said, so they're fighting at Athens, and click on Athens, Corey, okay. And let's read what it says about Athens because I don't know what's Athens. When did this happen? When did Athens?
So Athens. You got to read. I was just going to say Athens is the capital and largest city of Greece, a major coastal urban area in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, you can stop reading that and read the second paragraph. That's what I really want.
One of the oldest cities with its recorded history spanning over 3,400 years, and its earliest human presence beginning somewhere between the 11th and 7th millennia BC. According to Greek mythology, the city was named after Athena, the ancient Greek goddess of wisdom, but modern scholars generally agree that the goddess took her name after the city. Classical Athens was one of the...
Oh, that's fine. So you get going back to, like I said, so when his story says that Athens was fighting 11,600 years ago, or even 9,000, is that possible? When it says the history spans how far?
The 11th millennia.
No, but the first thing it says.
Oh, 3,400 years, yeah.
Right, yeah, the easy one, Corey. Yeah. So that's what I'm just trying to say is, if it says that this is how old the city is, could it be fighting someone at 11,000 something?
Probably not, eh?
No.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, it's just that's what I'm saying. Even the things that we do know, it are not presented accurately. So to think that somehow the fake stuff is presented in any kind of accuracy or truth is just laughable.
I'm sure that what they do is they go, oh, but there were humans there in the 11th millennia BC, so that's 11,000 years, so you're good, right? That explains everything.
Yeah, but earliest human presence isn't the same thing as the city.
No, it is not.
His thing literally says the city. So I guess you mean it's a plot of dirt, but then it wasn't the city.
Yeah.
And they know this because they have artifacts to know this. Like I said, so to me, the fact that it doesn't match the accuracy of the real place
right,
already is a problem just by knowing how to look and find what they're talking about. So also, it says that where the place is, Atlantis is supposedly an island, and it's past the Pillars of Hercules.
Okay.
And of course, I don't know what that is, or someone wouldn't. So you click on the Wikipedia page, and what does it say?
The Pillars of Hercules are the promontories that flank the entrance to the Strait of Gibraltar. The northern pillar, Calp Mons, is the Rock of Gibraltar.
Right. So it's in North Africa, right?
Yeah.
Right. The Pillars of Hercules, and it's right where Spain and Africa, in a sense, almost meet. And so, just give you an idea of where they're talking about. That's also over near where the Atlas Mountains are.
And an island couldn't exist there at such a large mass. It would be impossible,
right.
For example.
It would be over top of the surrounding land, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no. And so all this, in a sense, also is relating to hyperdiffusion. And that's like basically Atlantis, where they just take the name Atlantis off and almost keep everything else. And that's, to me, also what Graham Hancock kind of does. His supposed advanced culture that spans the globe and was, before he used to say white people, but I guess now he thinks it's Native Americans maybe or Indians, so you would have to say darker people. But I think that's also because people called him a racist, so.
Yeah.
That could have been a motivator. But anyways, Corey, read what it says, hyperdiffusion.
Sure. So hyperdiffusion is a pseudo-archaeological hypothesis that postulates that certain historical technologies or ideas were developed by a single people or civilization and then spread to other cultures. Okay.
Right. And if you read it, it says more, right? It says, thus all you have to keep reading the whole thing. So it's lost continents or whatever.
Thus, all great civilizations that engage in what appear to be similar cultural practices, such as the construction of pyramids, derived them from a single common progenitor. According to the proponents of hyperdiffusion, examples of hyperdiffusion can be found in religious practices, cultural technologies, megalith monuments, and lost ancient civilizations.
Right. And if you see there's a picture on the page, right? Map of what they say it happened.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is not, if you notice too, it totally leaves out Siberia.
Right. Yeah.
Which, as I've showed you maps before, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've also explained how we get to pyramids, starting actually in mountain beliefs and then mounds and turtles, shells, type of thing, or mounds of creation. And they start with actually ziggurats that don't really look like pyramids. And then they become pyramids. Some is because they're just recopying the whole, in a sense, creation mythology. And as we've already talked about before. So there are connections, but they are through Siberia, and they're not one way and one time and one people. There are multiple times, multiple ways, and multiple people with multiple languages. At least the Indo-European language, the Yinsen language, and the Nadane language, I would say, are related. And shell mounds, all these mound structures really have to do with mythology. The reason that they look similar is because the mythology says let's build like a hill mountain thing, especially of rocks. And that'll be like the first land, but that'll also be like almost like if you put someone in it, it's almost like it's a reincarnation machine in a sense. That's not a real machine, but I mean that the spirit power of the hill or mountain, whatever, the mountain of creation will take them, say to heaven or whatever.
Okay.
So,
yes.
In a sense.
For example, ancient Egyptians believed such an afterlife before that would happen, and that was some of the purposes of the pyramids, as an example.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Okay.
And a lot of it has to do, too, with the Milky Way and stuff, but that's just a path to get to, in a sense, heaven, because everybody gets to heaven, in a sense, because the mythology is all about a flat earth and a round sky and whatever, dome and firmament and heaven and all that is all most. And so, but a lot of people don't get that most of the stuff spread from the Middle East to Siberia. Well, first it was Siberia to the Middle East, then the Middle East to Siberia, then China to Siberia, then China, in a sense, by way of China through Siberia to back to the Middle East, and also to Europe, and then also people from Siberia and sort of North China and some North Japan go to over related DNA goes over, to the Americas, and they keep doing similar stuff, the religions that we're doing. Not hyperdiffusion though, especially like I said, wasn't one people, wasn't one clan, even wasn't,
Yeah, that's the real key, right? Is that it's like multiple multiple cultures, multiple people from different regions all moved around and did different things. And cross-pollinated, I guess, is the idea.
Right. And so RB1 is a lot of it for, say, Southern Europe, but Northern Europe is R1A. And then you have Q going to the Americas. But P gave birth to both R and Q. And that is why those mythologies are similar, because they come from, in a sense, this similar thing, not because of the Graham Hancock thing. Like, and as I told you, it goes back and they get ideas again and they change and they switch and they grab and it is like a total like clusterfuck.
Yes,
in a sense. I mean, it's
just like to add that R1A and R1B are haplogroups, which are aspects of DNA for tracing through the actual, from Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Middle East. Those are actually traces for DNA that you're talking about. One of the
correct.
People knew
the haplogroups, not
yes,
right? Because to me, the DNA helps us understand what's happening, and because that's what I try to do. I try to figure out what the DNA is, what the language is, what the cultures, what the animal husbandry, what the food products. Because when you start understanding all of that, and then how they order society, then when you see it going and doing and whatever and changing, you got a better idea. So, like I said, a hub is Siberia. Anything that doesn't show that is just an error. Right? They have a massive. I would say that to me, the Middle East and Siberia and North China, whatever, with a little bit of Mongolia, but those areas literally are where all the myths of the world practically come from. At least 90-something%. I mean, like just most. But it did not happen, and it more like happened like a pinball game than it happened like diffusion. And we can tell that, like I said, the DNA, but also there's another thing too is like say the qDNA, right? So it leaves at 30,000, gets to all the way to South America by 14 something. That DNA though isn't what made the South Americans. More people came. And it's the second wave, not the first one, the second wave that really made South Americans. And then the third wave is really what did most North America, in a sense, sort of. And and then the North Canada, that's the wave after that. But I mean, so it, once again, even like the Americas, everyone sees them as like, they're like isolated or something and never got ideas. That's ridiculous. Same with Egypt. Africa was getting ideas at 30,000, at 20,000. At 15,000, at 10,000, at 8,000, at 6,000, at 4,000, at 2,000. I mean, it was like a sieve. So I mean, my point is, I understand it's by the DNA and the different ones too. It wasn't like the same people just kept coming in. It was different DNAs. So, but when that happens, that's the reality. That's why, to me, the thought of hyperdiffusion is just absolutely ridiculous. The people left and went, boop, boop, they're done. Oh, no. So anyways, just wanted to say that's what, to me, gets to the people believing in things like the Graham Hancock is because of this hyperdiffusion that they think, explains everything. But it's a simpleton explanation, and it's wrong.
Right.
Yes.
And so you read, Marquis, some of the my blog that we're going to talk about now about Atlantis, the fake story, like the creation myth for racists. And what was your opinion after reading that, or some ideas you have?
Oh, yes. I actually think it was well done. You presented it in an actual structure that's easy to follow from the earliest period with Plato. Then you went through the Golden Age of Islam, for example, and then to the Renaissance, and later to the 19th century, and finally with Graham Hancock, and all those things relate to each other. I think that's very important. And some of these ideas, for example, in the 19th century, there were popular ideas of isolationism and diffusionism. Hyperdiffusionism is the extreme case that we were talking about. And isolationism was a racist idea in the 19th century where these people had absolutely no contact with each other. And that's not accurate. And as I said, it's a racist idea. And this all relates to why Atlantis is a racist story because, for example, Plato believed the Persians were inferior. They were enemies of his state, and he believed such people lacked logos and could only have doxa. Doxa is the idea of having a popular opinion. Logos is having logic and reason. In fact, logos is connected to logic in that term. And what I want to say there is this is how Plato is racist. You actually explained that in your actual paragraphs there about Plato and how it relates to, say, the Nazis and to Graham Hancock.
Right, because Graham Hancock said, well, I'm not racist. I mean, maybe people use my stuff for racism, but if your stuff can be used for racist propaganda, it's racist. Why the fuck would they want it? I don't see them doing that to my shit.
Yes, for example, I mean, you've talked about Donnelly in your writing, who had the racist ideas in the 19th century. He wrote the book in 1882, for example. He also drew a map of where Atlantis was. And I think that's where you based your picture off of, if I'm not mistaken. Not sure, but I know that he did that in that book. And what I'm trying to say...
Well, I saw the History Channel where somebody had did a drawing very close to that. And so I thought, that's perfect. I'll just take that because they're putting arrows and saying they're going these ways. It did none of the... That has nothing to do with DNA. Yeah. That thing is just fantasy 100%.
And another thing that I would like to add is Madame Blavatsky and her ideas of the root races that you mentioned in your article, and how, the Aryan race, for example, was one of the races, and that relates to the actual Nazis, for example, in some of their ideology, maybe not directly, but they used these ideas as well because it supported their hypothesis of a master race, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying, too. The people that favored the Graham Hancock thing, just if you told me, let's say I didn't know, and you told me Native Americans didn't build their things, or Egyptians didn't build their things, that sounds kind of bigoted to me. How the fuck do you know that? I mean, why would you even think that? I mean, it's just like I've heard I was watching a show the other day, because I watched some of the pseudos people, and this one's debunking it. Not because I show release about debunking, because I just want to know what nonsense claims people are making. Because sometimes it blows my mind. I would never have thought that they would come up with this. Like they say, oh, not all. This is what's really funny too. Not all, but a few of the vases that were made by the pre-dynastic or pre-king, Egypt, that they were done by an advanced culture. Like, what's funny is they find a tomb, right, that has, like, say, 35 vessels in it, and they'll pick out and say, well, that one right there, they couldn't have done that. Right, Corey? I mean, you're like, seriously?
Here's the idea. What if these people actually had different skill levels and have, for the technicians of actual pottery making, and some were highly skilled and others were not? They could be from the same period and it could explain it.
I totally agree with you. That could absolutely be the answer. I mean, but I'm just saying the fact that they look, and if they see something they think is too good, they're like, yeah, an Egyptian.
It had to be Atlanteans.
Yeah, exactly. Just, well, there's nobody else. And also it was found in their thing with a whole bunch of other ones. Why would you just randomly pick out and say, I know that can't be? Some of the stuff I did, like I said, I used to not really even think about pseudoarchaeology shit at all because it doesn't interest me. It's fake. I don't fucking, I only like real stuff. But like I told you, two people, one was an atheist, one was a leftist, and said to me that we don't need to trust science because Graham Hancock has showed that they're wrong and not trustable. And yeah. So then I realized, oh no, I guess I do have to attack that dude.
Yeah. Because scientists making mistakes or being wrong sometimes disproves all of science everywhere, all the time.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Well, then I was like, oh, no, just a few, just the ones that are these famous ones that they complain about my stuff. Oh, yeah. But I know, too, that it's not genuine because, I watched both his Graham Hancock's shows, right? His Atlantis Without the Name. So his Atlantis Without the Name story, of course, he doesn't even know where it is, but it's advanced, but he doesn't know. I mean, if anyone brought that to me, I would go, that's not even a hypothesis yet.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to, challenge it. Do you have finish it? That sounds like a working theme you're trying to do. When you get more info, then come back. You need to tell me where it is, which culture, what time of that culture. Not just even tell me, well, it's somewhere. Because like if you told me, well, Damien, it's in Siberia. Well, that doesn't mean which part of Siberia, which culture in Siberia. There's more than one culture in Siberia, and they're not all the same age. And I know that. So if you're like, well, the northernest one only got there 4,500 years ago. Do you mean that? Because that wouldn't be your ice age then. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so my point is, yeah, because once again, like, why no one would take his shit seriously is it's not falsifiable in it all. Especially when you're like, yeah, I don't even know where it is. I mean, that's what I feel like the Atlantis is, though. People, they like, sensational things. I like Lord of the Rings, but let's not make a cult of it.
Yes, let's locate Middle Earth.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah. Right. And take it seriously if you can find somewhere there's a Mordor or something.
Or go, well, archaeologists don't know everything, therefore Middle Earth is definitely somewhere.
See, you got a future in conspiracy theory shows, Corey, right there. You got it.
They were wrong one time, so Middle Earth is over there. Maybe it's over there, though.
Yes,
right, and somehow you'll become a millionaire.
Just one point relating to Atlantis is that they think that there's two spots potentially beyond the Pillars of Hercules where Atlantis could be. That's in the Wikipedia entry, for example.
Right.
And what I'm trying to say is that it's too big to be in either of those places.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. What? That's why to me it's funny when I watched another show where someone tried to say, "Oh, well, this is the most likely place because we put all the things together." I'm like, you had to leave some out because you just pointed to Africa. And so, and then what's even funnier is like they're like, "Oh, it's in Northwest Africa, right?" That's where all because in Plato's story he says that they have elephants and stuff, and of course people go, "Well, elephants now only are here, yeah, because people never traveled with elephants, right?" Hannibal literally went over to Italy, right, over the Alps, so we know elephants moved around. Like, come fucking. So I think that's just my point too. Is it's funny when someone's like, well, elephants now only live here. Like, well, that doesn't mean that's fucking, yeah. Or like someone goes, well, they're not on those islands that off of Africa, the Canary Islands or whatever. Well, now, how do you know they've never been there? I mean, yeah. But let's just assume they weren't there. It's still, you can't present, because I feel like when they present it to people to make it seem more reasonable, they present only the things that match, right?
Of course.
Not say, well, actually, one of the big things this doesn't match is it's not an island. Literally, the name Atlantis is about an island, and it said it was sunken in the Atlantic Ocean. So there is an Atlantic Ocean.
Yes, that's a logical fallacy known as an appeal to bias, meaning that you find things that actually match your hypothesis and build upon it.
Yeah, that's like people don't get. Like I got told Corey before, what's really amazing, Marquis? So much of my stuff matches any kind of thing you could find, like on Wikipedia, whatever. Even though I say all these amazing things, they also all match everything because I actually looked. And so that's why I feel like people want to be taken seriously. You know what you have to do? You got to go do looking and research. Yeah. You can't just say and like I was saying about my opinion on Googling something. Mm-hmm. So Googling something, as you said before, can be just not something for scholarly or research or whatever, right? That's the statement. But I also think it can, depending on who's doing it and how you're doing it. Yeah. Like I told you, I wanted to do a thing where I show how I do DNA, and to actually help me figure out religion.
Okay.
So, like I told you, I want to learn what kind of religion is in a given area, right? So, first thing you got to look is who the hell lives there. But then you got to see what is the dynamics of that area. Did the DNA change and stuff through time? Because if you're trying to make a claim about religion in a time frame, you can't look now and assume that actually answers everything.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to figure out what the religion was of China, right? And everything looks like it's shamanism, right? One of the big. And so, but I don't want to just assume that because the Chinese shamanism says that. Well, they may say that because of a bias, right? I mean, they may want it to be, yes, this is our thing, you know. So I need to look at it. Can I be convinced that there's a reason to also say that?
Yeah.
That's outside of some sort of a bias that they're doing. So I said, okay, well, what is the DNA? So DNA in China is basically 3 DNAs, in a sense, the 3 founding fathers of that area of Asia, because also it has to do with Japan and it has to do with Korea and some of the other things, like I think some of Taiwan or no, Vietnam, I think northern Vietnam. Anyways, but so I wanted to find out because I wanted to be more sure. I don't like guessing. I like building my stuff off of evidence. So I looked and said, okay, so it has the cDNA, it has nDNA, it has qDNA as the main DNAs. Okay. So then I think, well, and in the South it has O. But so so I go, what is qDNA? qDNA relates to the Siberians. It is Siberian DNA, and it's the ones that were shamans and spoke the Yinsen language that relates to the people that go to the Americas. In fact, qDNA, which is in China, right, that I told you, one of the 3 main DNAs, that is 95% of Mexico all the way to South America for male DNA. It is like most of what is there. So, and then funny thing, they have shamanism. I mean, yeah. But that's what I was saying is, so so that DNA over there has shamanism, same DNA here has shamanism, same DNA in China, also shamanism. But am I sure that's the only thing, right? So then they have nDNA. Well, nDNA is where the Hongshang culture comes from about 7,000 years ago to 6,500. And that culture relates to the language that is in both Korea and Japan. Went to Korea by 3,500, went to Japan by 1,500 or something around there. And that also relates to the Turks. They leave and go to Siberia 5,000 years ago. And so it's younger than the Korean, because the Korean is 5,500. And so is the, can't remember off the top of my head what the name of the Siberian tribe, but it's part of this culture too. The Hongshang culture, DNA and language went over a little bit more Siberia, but Eastern, and Turks went Western. So they like split, but they all come from North China, the Hongshang culture, which also relates to Korea and Japan. So the people from the Hongshang culture, they go north, right, to be 5,500. Same time they went to Korea, they go to Siberia. The people that they go to Siberia is where the name shaman even comes from. So that, just as you understand, they're not just shamans. That's literally where we get the term. So, but so does Mongolian have shamanism, and so does Turkish. But Mongolian and Turkish, if you go look, which you'd have to go, but I'm not going to do that, but let's just tell you. So if you go look, they have the same religion. Very, very similar, right? But even funnier is, but it's not their religion. It's actually the Siberians. It's the Yinsen religion. They have a copy of the Yinsen religion. And the Yinsen deity is actually the deity that is the one that China uses for their divine right of heaven. When they say like the divine right of kings, like we have the right to be king, or the or empire of the whatever Han or whatever, those are in a sense empires that are founded on the belief that they have the divine right of heaven, which is from Tan, which relates to Tanger in Mongolian and Turk, but also it's a little bit different word in Yinsen. But that's where Proto-Yinsen, not even just Yinsen, but Proto-Yinsen is where the word comes from.
Okay.
So but that's shamanism. It's a form of shamanism. And that's why all of that, just to show you, so I can trace the DNA and I can trace so the nDNA has shamanism. So I'm just trying to show you. They have Q, they have N, and they have C. nDNA, shamanism, right? qDNA, probably the originators of shamanism, or certainly the oldest, some of the oldest. then you have cDNA. cDNA is literally Mongol DNA, and it relates to even the Nadane going over what they also have shamans. So I'm just saying, so every DNA that's the main DNA for, let's say, Han Chinese, right, and which is the biggest ethnic group in China, so you know, every one of those DNAs is shamanism. So it's not a shocker. But then I thought, but O is pretty big in the South. So I checked that. Guess what the religion of the highest level of people for O? Because I looked at that. Who has the highest DNA of O in China? And I went and looked at those people, and they believe in shamanism. That's the sun and moon religion. And then I looked, it's called like Dupali or something. And then I looked at the second highest, which was like separate from the other one. But like, I don't remember now, for like hundreds of miles. Like, no, it's not close. And they also have Dupali religion. There's just shamanism of the sun and the moon. And so, to me, I feel real strongly to say that Chinese had really their first major culture religion was shamanism. And Korea is big in shamanism. And then, in a sense, Shinto, which is in Japan, Shinto is, in a sense, a form of sort of like animism and shamanism sort of together, which animism is always in everything, but sometimes people make it a bigger focus or a lesser focus, but it's always, in a sense, involved. The belief that things are magical.
Yes,
take that out, you don't really have religion.
Spiritual energy.
What's that? Yeah, spiritual energy, right. So you take that out. If you say, no more animism, no more spiritual energy, no more afterlives, is there religion? I mean, if all there's things removed of that, then that pretty much is, that's pretty much their whole deal.
Yes, and one thing I'd like to add is something, what you've done is the actual history of religion, which you are doing in your book, but there's an actual progression of, animism to, say, shamanism, to paganism, to, like, goddesses to gods in a line.
Absolutely. Right, yeah. I think it starts, I always say goddess and then gods, but that's accurate. But I think it's actually that animal, maybe even totems, or there's a thing called a Tulier deity, which is a deity that's considered a patron of an area. Like say the god of the Middle East, that's a patron deity. That would be a Tulier deity. If you say like, my God only cares about this mountain, that would be a Tulier deity. My God only cares about one town, that's a Tulier deity. I have a personal spirit, that is a Tulier deity. When you say I have my own angel, that is your Tulier deity in a sense. Anyways, but so I think that in a sense that loose, sort of positive, like the beneficial in a sense, helpful, that's where religion starts with the animals. I think it's a shaman. Almost think of it this, like a shaman's helper, right? Because some of the pillars show like a person, and talking about Göbekli Tepe, shows a person, and then it has like a fox alongside them jumping. It's not attacking them. It's like it's playing or with them in a sense. And so I see it that, and a lot of the other figures are growling or protecting openings and stuff like that. So I think that there's animal deities first. It's shamanism at Göbekli Tepe that's turning into paganism. And so,
question. From your earlier work, you also included totemism in your ideas.
Correct. Well, yeah, I'm not trying to give the whole thing of religion right now, but yes, to me, animism is first in Africa. Probably got it maybe even first from Israel, from the Neanderthals, and then those ideas went back into Africa. And then those people, because of the climate, went all the way to South Africa, sort of, and then shot back. And then South African, not those people, but South Africans, a female, shoots up to Eastern Africa and then meets a male coming from West Africa, in a sense, or came from West Africa in a sense. And then that is what kind of goes out all over, in a sense, the out of Africa stuff. But out of Africa also doesn't happen just in one thing. Like I said, first time they go out, it's like 100 and something, maybe 120. And some of those people get to, say, China by, I think it's 60 or 80,000. And, or even could have maybe got there 100, because I know somebody got to 100 all the way, female DNA at least, got to Soviet cave 100. So, anyways, but those people didn't last. Like, that's what people don't understand. None of those are our ancestors. They may have been first peoples, but they're not anything to do with us. That's the same thing when people think of Peking man or something. People in China used to think, oh, that relates to Chinese. We didn't come from Africa. Yeah, well, first off, Homo erectus came from Africa. One of them went to China and turned into Peking man, or what you call, and also into Damasalodi or something, or some other kind of hominid in China. And it also is from Homo erectus. So it did come from Africa. So first off, even if it was true, which is not, you still would be wrong to say you didn't come from Africa.
Yeah.
I'm just making a comment that you did. In fact, even Homo erectus did. So you did. And the next video, actually, I want to do, and on our channel, I want to do, because I watched some shows, even by like scholars or whatever. I was very unhappy how they talk, because they don't really explain Homo erectus, what's going on, thoroughly enough. Homo erectus, and I also don't agree that Homo erectus probably went, Heidelbergus goes from Turkey all the way to Spain, especially when Homo erectus does go into Spain. There's literally, but they don't go into anywhere else in Europe. And then the first, just think of this, the first Neanderthals, Spain. DNA that probably came from humans went to Spain. So, and how do I know that? Because it came from North Africa, because it stayed North Africa and was us.
Yeah.
We, in a sense, 700 to 650,000 years ago, we stay, or maybe just go a little more west, south, but the DNA goes up, right? And it becomes Homo heidelbergus, Homo neanderthalis, Homo desovian. And we know because of DNA. So they go up there. And like I said, when you look at where Homo erectus was, it already was in Spain. I mean, it like bleeds from Africa up into Spain. So I already, before I did more research, I was already thinking that's got to be the answer. Or certainly it seems like like what do they call it? Occam's razor.
Right.
That's certainly like the more simple explanation. That the one place we know they went, they turned into someone else, because they like to do that. When they went to China, they turned into Peking man, and the other one, when they went to the Cossack Mountains, they turned into, pronounce it, but the Svini man or whatever. It's another species, like shorter, kind of like, like the fluorescent people, which they always go, oh, how did the Hobbit people, come about? And I'm like, well, let's see. The only hominid that was near them that we know for sure, 100 miles away, was Homo erectus. And Homo erectus does like to, in a sense, evolve into other things. And that's our thing too about Homo erectus. I want to mention. They start out like 600 cc's or something in their brain, 6 to 8, I think it was. And then it becomes like 14, 16. Later, like at 300,000 years ago. They died at 150. But so 300. So it didn't, because they start like at 2 million or something, and they go all the way, to 150. But they don't stay the same. That's another thing, like religion, all this. Nothing stays the same. It just constantly evolves.
Right.
And that happened with every single, even Homo erectus. That's why some people have been like, well, is it right to call it Homo erectus, the one that left or changed? Well, I think that people are not getting, everything's evolving.
Yeah.
So it didn't stay Homo erectus. Yeah, that's accurate. It kept changing. And I want to, like I said, show that in relation to, and then in North Africa, then there's were us. See, because some people try to say that only the male was out. And I've heard this before in North Africa, but that's wrong, because you look at I have another thing. The female DNA literally starts there. There's a research that shows it starts there. I was having confusion before that, and other people also, of where the, in a sense, humans come from. But that is where we come from. And then we both, male and female, moved to west, coastal, whatever, Africa. And then I think males stay there. Women probably with another that did, that didn't spread their genes. Another male said it wasn't just one woman by herself went all the way to South Africa, but obviously not part of our genus or whatever, or not they didn't pass on their DNA. So whoever went down with them, like I said, they go down to South Africa, and then people from they go down there like 230,000 years ago. They go down to South Africa, and that they stay down there, right? And they don't go up until later. They go up, I think it's 160 or something. They go up to Eastern Africa, and then, like I said, that's when the DNA from West Africa, from the male, finally shows up, or was already there, and now they mingle. Not exactly sure what happened, but that's so when people are like, oh, well, we come from. If you mean that, where did Adam and Eve finally meet? In a sense, okay, then we're talking East Africa. If you're saying, where was the last place that we were our most arcane together? Well, that would be North Africa.
Okay.
300,000. See what I'm saying? So, yeah. And then if you're saying, where did all females come from? Well, females came from the South, but originally also North Africa. But we stayed in the South for a long time, because the religion doesn't leave, in a sense. To me, religion doesn't even show up until after 100,000 in South Africa. Like I said, could have traveled down to me from the ideas that came from the Neanderthal, because they're already doing red ochre, they're already doing burials, we weren't. And so they predate us doing stuff, but we just did it more extravagant. Because the first time we did 100,000 in Israel, we put a deer antler above the head. So it's more evolved than, the normal Neanderthal burial, that didn't do stuff like that until about 50,000.
Okay.
50,000, they put a panther claw in a female Neanderthal's like kind of crypt. They put like a cave sort of thing and put her in there, and then put a panther paw. So I think it's totemism stuff. But see, by 50,000, they might have met humans, because humans hit France by 50,000. We know that because something close to either the bow or like a atlatl or some kind of like dart spear or something, probably a gun. I mean, a bow or some kind of a thing like that. Though is 50,000 in France, and the first one I think is 85,000. I think it is or 80,000 in South Africa. So the idea came from South Africa, which is also helps me because I know we went out. And so I also know they brought their religion with them, because people take their brain and their beliefs with them.
When they
so
go
it helps
yeah.
And I'm saying, instead of just DNA, I can also see the technology.
Right.
Is like, Graham Hancock, advanced technology hits France 50,000 years ago. They had the bow or something, I guess, or a dart thrower or something. Yeah, because it's either an arrow or a dart of some kind or whatever. It's not a regular spear. It's too thin. It's like an arrow. So anyways, so that's why I know. And I think that when humans got there, not only did they mate with them, the Neanderthal, the Neanderthals that were over there had even evolved more by 50,000. I mean, because they had been doing like eagle talon necklaces or something for like 130,000 years, and like wearing black feathers and stuff. So goth, I'm like, I can relate to that.
Right.
But the fact that they're doing that, right, that tells me that they already have very advanced religion. So we're like the newbies coming up, and these people are like gothed out. And I also think that the different thing wasn't totally amicable, because it's only their females with our males, which when that generally happens, it's not like by choice.
Right.
So I think that, but there has to be some sort of a, still not like total violence somehow, because ideas cross over. Neanderthals become more like, even more trinkets and more like doing stuff than they did before. And so they get like more totemistic. And humans also pick up some of the Neanderthals' tools and the styles and the way to bury and the color of putting ochre on the burial. So they copy bunch. So so there used to be a debate like who was teaching who. I think we both
It probably
shared
went
ideas.
both ways. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't.
Exchange of ideas, as you were saying in earlier cultures, for example.
Right. Yeah, right. So it's a wrong idea to think that one did everything. But I don't really think, I think that together they kind of like figured out new things because they both have these different ideas. And people are like, well, how do they talk? Well, this goes back to me that when we talk a lot of times, like me, I use my hands and stuff. So a lot of times people were already using hands and you and me and, that.
For sure.
But,
Yep.
So
sure.
Also, there would be art that they could express through themselves to convey ideas, which Neanderthals also had.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I think that went a little off the thing, but it relates, I think, to all this, really.
Yep, for sure. I think it all makes sense, but we're at an hour, so I guess where do we want people to go? Damien, where do you want people to go to see you?
Well, I say just go to my website, damienmarieathope.com. Or I also check out the videos, on YouTube, because I think that there are tons of educational stuff that you should be, empowering yourself with.
For sure. And Marquis, where would you like people to find you?
Well, I don't really have too much social media, but I frequent with Damien Athope. They can find me through him.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you to the people who watched us on this discussion. There was a few comments. Wolf Spirit from over on Blue Sky was here, so hi to you. And Summer and the Geek, good to see you. And thank you, Damien. Thank you, Marquis. Have a good one.
Right on. All right, take care.
Okay.